Welcome to the Law, Your Money, and You. I'm Roberta Saphire, an attorney in Sharon, Massachusetts.
And I'm Camille Barron, a financial and insurance advocate, also in Sharon, Massachusetts.
That's good.
Yes.
But what's really good is the show we have tonight.
Oh, yes.
Very unique.
And this is something that you and I attended not long ago, and it's very pertinent to what we do, because anytime that we are dealing with, whether it be law or financial issues, there may be some disagreements, there may be some controversy, and it's very important, whether business or personal conversations, that you be able to state your case diplomatically and still hold respect for the other person. And we're going to learn some of those techniques
and they call
today.
that, the title is Difficult Conversations, and we went to it at the meeting house at
That's
the
right.
Unitarian Church, and
That's
we
right.
have 4 of the 5 people that were the primary movers, and we welcome you. We thank you for coming. This is so important, and we're going to start with Andrew, because we remembered his name first. So tell us a little bit about yourself, which we'll ask everybody, and then we'll get into about difficult people, how to deal with them.
Well, hello. My name is Andrew Plumridge. I'm the general auditor at Boston Private Bank in Boston, and I've been a Sharon resident for 10 years.
Very good. And how did you start in with the with this topic? How did it come about?
So as a group, we were very concerned with the overall tone of the political environment and the discussions that are going on, the negativity, the hostility, the polarization in the environment. And we said to ourselves, okay, what can we do about this? How can we get people to listen to each other and have the difficult conversations?
That's
Very
good. And our next person that we want to find out is who, let's see, he's married to Susie. Ray Wallace.
it's
Ray
not.
Wallace. How's that? I remember.
There, you got
I
it.
remembered.
You guys have
Camille
married
and I
to Susie.
practice.
That's right. And you practice well. And yes, I'm Ray. And what the question is, how I got into this too, or
Yeah,
who am I?
well, tell us a little bit about yourself too, what you do and all that goody stuff.
I'm a lawyer. I do mostly child welfare law these days, cases where the state is intervening in a family, and education law.
Good.
I practice out of Canton. I used to have an office in Sharon.
So we got the money and we got the law,
The
and
law.
you
And
to
the youth.
the children.
And then up there you got the
And-
brains.
And I'm sure, we'll get to them, I'm sure you've run into a lot of difficult decisions and,
That's
people.
a fact. That's right.
okay, and how did you get into this?
Well, as Andrew was saying, the divisiveness that we were seeing, that seems to have polarization more and more just ambient in our culture, just around us all. And we were even seeing it in conversations, I think, in church. It's not, I mean, from my perspective, it's not just about being able to have conversations with people that you disagree with. It's about being able to have empathy for their positions or understanding of people that you disagree with, even if they're not present in front of you. What we're hearing a lot these days is about othering and shaming and judging people who have views, even if they're not present in front of us. So I think the combined goal was to get people together to be thinking about what is it that people believe that disagree with me, and why do they believe that, rather than just judging them as wrong.
Okay, so Laurie next, right? Tell us about you and then continue where he left off.
Okay, I'm Laurie Wallace, and I'm a speech-language pathologist. I work at the Learning Center for the Deaf out in Framingham. But my role in all of this came about mostly through my activity in the church, and I was just really concerned about the tone of how people were interacting with each other and in society in general. I mean, and people separating and not respecting each other when they spoke to each other. And it feels like people just stop having conversations if they disagree. And I just don't feel like we can be a productive society if that happens. So that was my motivation to get involved.
True. Good. And young lady?
So my name is Rumni Saha. I am a special needs teacher at the Canton Public Schools. I work in the middle school, and I'm also a writer. For the last 4 years, I've been blogging for the Huffington Post. And
And a good one. We read you.
thank you. So for me, pretty much what everyone has said. And, you know, people, even in Sharon, people are not really aware of, you know, they don't know too much about the church, the Unitarian Church, and they feel that we are a homogeneous group. And we're actually very different from each other. We have different, you know, viewpoints. We come from different religious backgrounds. We have different political views. And so we were feeling that it wasn't just out in the community amongst us too. There was a lot of, you know, not dissension, I wouldn't say, but, you know, differences. And we wanted to kind of address those in a civil manner. So we just started talking to each other and felt that this was a really important topic and we needed to do something about it. I think everybody was feeling that they needed to do something, but we just kind of said, you know, someone has to forge ahead, and that's exactly what we did.
Well, it seemed to be very well received.
Yes.
Quite a big attendance.
And organized, too.
Yes, very well organized. So can you give us some examples of topics that typically could result in this type of a disagreement and maybe could be handled a different way? Andrew, you want to start?
Okay, I'll kick it off. What we tried to do in the format of our session was when everybody walked into the room, we had them express an opinion by putting a Post-it note along a sheet of paper that had two divergent opinions on it. And so, for example, a topic like immigration, you say, okay, on one side, everybody should have the right to stay in the United States. On the other side, everybody should follow the laws of the United States. And so two positive, and we worked very hard to come up with positive statements on both sides. And then we polled the group on where they fell along that spectrum. And we used that to inform the rest of the structure of the discussion.
Did any of these questions seem antagonistic towards the people?
We tried very hard to have positive statements. And we actually stayed away from a couple of topics where the one of the two endpoints was going to be negative.
Because this is a good format for any organization to follow. I mean, or even just relatives sitting down at Thanksgiving, you know. But what was interesting in those questions is you just said too, both of them are positive, but there's answers. You can just take part of each of those and both be right. And it can become, you don't think it can become antagonistic if
Well,
they
it
don't
certainly
fully agree with this or fully agree with that? Wait a minute, Ray's smiling. What do you think, Ray?
It happens.
Ray's a lawyer, so he's professionally antagonistic.
Yeah, you don't have all those lawyer jokes for nothing. I'm just following up on his point and yours. I think you're right. And that was really the purpose in this introductory exercise of getting people to take a position, take a stand on a question. It was a continuum that was there for them to put a Post-it note on, is in the example that Andrew gave. You'd have at one end of the spectrum might be that everybody should follow the immigration laws of the United States. At the other was that everybody should be able to allowed to stay here. And as you were saying, you can believe some of both of those. Mm-hmm. And so where do you fall? Do you fall right in the middle? Do you equally feel both of those and take a position there? And we were looking for questions where the people present represented a range across the spectrum. Mm-hmm. I mean, ideally, you'd have a camp on this far end and a camp on that far end, and now you've got the material for really good dialogue, for a challenging dialogue, and an opportunity for people to understand why the other side believes what they believe.
Yeah, I was going to say, continuing with the immigration topic, because you had a few other topics. What did you find? I know this is abbreviated because that was a long a long time, and you had a lot of people there.
We did,
A
we
lot
did.
of people.
Really, the point I was thinking that was important was that we wanted people to be spread out along that continuum so that they could practice some kind of tools to still have a productive conversation, to still be respectful of the other people, and maybe to learn something from the other side, so that instead of staying with this group of people that you agree with, you have a conversation and maybe get moved along that continuum, or maybe not. You just learn something about the other person having the conversation. So I think the specific questions on those continuum weren't the important part. It was to have people with divergent opinions practice a way to have a productive conversation.
Well,
That's
one of
fascinating.
the issues right now that's very prominent because of all the violence in the schools and whatnot, you probably have more divergent opinions on what the policy should be regarding guns and gun control. I don't think there are many people who are in the middle on that.
Right.
You know, you pretty much have the Second Amendment rights people, and then you have the people at the other end who believe that, you know, that they think that that's the solution.
I think
So-
that was one of the
I don't know.
topics.
Was that one of
one
the
of our
top-
That was
questions.
one
It
of the
was.
topics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was one
Did
of
you
our
find that there
questions.
was more of a polarization, Rumni?
So at that particular, I don't think yes, we did talk about gun control. That was one of the topics, and people were kind of, it was mixed, wasn't it? Yes, I think there were people, you know, from both sides, and they were able to have very productive conversations in a civil manner. And so I think it wasn't just one or the other. And one of the tactics that we kind of employed intentionally was when people were coming in, we made sure that they were not sitting with people they knew.
Yeah.
So that was a good way of kind of getting to know other people, you know, not just being comfortable.
Well, her
with
husband
who-
was happy about that.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I'm just picking on Jim. Well, let's go back to Andrew now. Andrew, so you can see. So we go back to the immigration. What's interesting is they were getting people to talk to each other, and you know, what did you find from that?
Well, and again, so in terms of structure of the session, we picked the two topics that had the widest polarization because we wanted the conversations to be interesting and we wanted people to have a bit of that give and take, those difficult conversations. But the first conversation we kicked off with the group, and we divided everybody up into groups of 5 or 6. Some of them had to move around the room and get organized, but the first topic, we didn't give them any instruction. We just said, let's have a conversation. Have a conversation. Here's the two topics. Or, you know, here are the 2 sentences, positive statements. Have a conversation amongst your group. And we use that as the feeder for our first internal discussion. And so the idea was, let's see what people do just naturally and give us a sense of what how the room was feeling and whether people were going to be actually engaged. And we were worried that some of the topics might get people so hot under the collar that there
Yeah.
might be some aggressive conversations. I think our population was similar enough that we never got to that point.
Yeah, I
We
Like-
did have some disagreements, which was great, which is
Yeah.
what we were
That's what we
looking
wanted.
for and
Yeah,
how
but nobody
to address
got up and
those.
hollered and
No.
stomped out.
You don't
I've
remember
seen
that?
happen. What? No, that didn't happen.
No fist fights broke out, so
No,
that was good.
No
We didn't-
fights broke
Yeah.
out.
But there were a lot of people, not just from Sharon, but from outside, different communities as well. So it wasn't just the Unitarian Church in Sharon. It was people from the community, like you and your spouses, but also there were people from other communities as
Yeah.
well, which is what made it diverse and more interesting.
Well, the show goes to other communities. So for people that don't know it, Sharon is a suburbia. We wouldn't think that fights would ever break out here or this or that. But it was enough that you thought of this topic, that it happens anywhere and everywhere. So we go back to Ray because he wants to say something.
Always. I think.
Let's go
just
back
here-
to the immigration. What happened with
Okay.
that?
Well, I think the immigration, and if I could mix in the gun control thing too, which is a
Okay.
different example of the same phenomenon, I think. I think you were saying that that there's not much middle ground there. And I think that's what we hear in the media. That's what we're exposed to. And that's part of what provoked us to want to do this.
Oh.
If you think, you're going to hear a lot from the Second Amendment Foundation and people like that about it's got to be all the way over here. And then especially after an incident of school violence, you're going to hear a lot about it's got to be all the way over here. But if you actually sit people down to talk about it, most people are going to see some wisdom in some limits, but not complete bans. People are going to have conversations. People who support gun ownership don't necessarily believe that everybody should have the right to have an AK-47. And people who want fewer guns don't necessarily think that nobody should ever be allowed to hunt or target shoot. There really is a spectrum, and I use that example because you had mentioned it, but also the same on the immigration question, that we don't find many people who really think that we shouldn't have immigration laws, and anybody who found their way into our country should be allowed to stay without any screening or repercussion, or no matter what they do, they should never be sent back out. I don't meet many people who believe that, and you don't meet many people who think that there should never be something like DACA or any kind of deferred status for people whose own countries are in difficulty. Most people, once they sit down to start thinking about the policies, are going to believe more of a middle ground. And even there's plenty of room for dialogue. If we're both in the middle, but I'm leaning a little bit this way about, say, the DACA program, what some people are calling dreamers, then there's a dialogue there too. But I don't think it's all at the extremes. And I think that's consistent to finally answer your question.
Yeah.
I think that's consistent with what we experienced at this seminar we did, this talk we did.
Fantastic seminar. But what Laurie said, the important thing is, and you can see that, is how to get people to talk. And it may not be immigration or gun law. It could just be when does a kid go to bed at night, or anything like that, or playing with the neighbor next door, or letting a neighbor park in your lot, or something like that.
You know, I wonder sometimes, and I know you had it so that people were sitting with people they didn't know, but I'm just wondering if there are more arguments among people who are married or know each other really well, because there's a tendency to take what they've said in that particular issue and all the other, everything else, like other baggage that might be there, might come out because they know that this person has a certain point of view about this or that. So I'm wondering, like on those holidays, Thanksgiving or whatever it is, whether some of this may even be more challenging.
Absolutely, and I think you're less polite
Yeah.
sometimes when you're with people that are closest to you. So
Right.
maybe you're more extreme in your opinions
could,
than
that's
you
right.
might be in a group of unfamiliar people.
So maybe you should have the group, married people sitting together.
Yeah.
What do you think, Rumni, on that? On putting people together.
Putting people together, I think it's really important to know other people's views. Of course, you know what your
Right.
spouse is, and you can anticipate. And I mean, if you're going to fight, you're going to fight no matter where, right? So I think it's best to have, people that you don't know and find out. And we were surprised, people we think we knew. We were surprised how different their views are. And it's wonderful to know that and respect. When I started, I had very set views. But just getting to know the four of us, I think closely, it changed my views too on a lot. Like I started looking at myself and I thought, I need to do a lot of introspection. I don't know everything.
Sometimes they call it, we had somebody on the show that dealt with, what is it, unaware discrimination.
Oh, unconscious?
Unconscious discrimination.
Yeah.
And that could be the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, well, I don't discriminate, but well, that was unconscious
True,
discrimination.
Yes.
true.
Yeah.
Awareness is
Men are
good.
more guilty of it than women.
Really?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, boy.
Speaking of unconscious,
That was pretty conscious, right?
oh yeah,
Yeah, I was conscious. I'm just kidding.
I think that one of the benefits of
We
an
got you've got to
exercise
be
like this
kidding coming up, so I said that's why I said you've got to be kidding. Yeah,
Is,
so go ahead.
You're right. I think it's the awareness and being willing to be open to new ideas, new points of view.
Yes.
I remember years and years ago, I read it was very popular at the time, it was called The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck. And I remember one of the things in that was you have to be willing to revise what he called your map of reality. Because the map of reality can be very rigid.
Yeah.
And no matter what you hear, what you take in, it's not going to change. And then it really is better, though, if it's if flexible and you're willing to accommodate new ideas, then it should always be changing. So that was one of the things that reminded me of to go through that.
So what did you find out after it was all over? What were your conclusions?
One of
What
my
was that?
conclusions was just that we need to do more of this. And I think we've talked a little bit about some ideas for how to kind of keep bringing groups of people together to practice
wonderful.
this kind of thing, because we just learned that it's important for us to do it. And without it, I feel like we judge each other way too much. And
I'm going to ask a question, and you all four, I want you all four to answer. Have you found, after what you did here, and it was very successful, have you found yourself applying it in your everyday life and where you work? And can you give a quick example? I'm going to start with Andrew.
Oh, I was
his name
hoping,
begins
I was
with
hoping
A.
you wouldn't start with me. No.
We could change.
So in my professional life, I often am telling people in my company news that they don't want to hear. A process isn't working as well as it should be. Something went wrong. We need to change something. They need to spend more money on, compliance or staff or something. And so oftentimes we're having these difficult conversations at work. And I found that the techniques that we practiced as a group were very good in terms of reflecting back. Look, I understand that you've got a profit and loss that you've got to manage, but we also have to be cognizant of this, and we want to make sure that we're all getting to a good place.
Have you maybe advised your company that they should have a little thing like that? Because sometimes they do that.
Yeah, and we actually have a very good program that our HR department runs, where they have discussions on topics. We did one probably about 5 or 6 months ago on race relations, and it was very interesting to get different people's perspectives and things that had happened to different people, and to get that sense. And that was a very powerful moment for the company to do that.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So that's good. And how about you, Ray?
yes, I think it has affected my work a little bit, the conversations that we had and working for it. Partly because when we started this, some of us started with the foundation that we're coming at it not just from a practical but somewhat from a spiritual perspective, that we feel that we're called to love our neighbors, we feel that we're called not to judge others, and that fed our participation into this. That really drove us into wanting to have something to do with this. So even though dealing with people who have different opinions than the one that I'm presenting is what I do for a living, really. I mean,
Yes.
as you know,
It's
as an
difficult,
attorney,
very difficult.
if you can't
especially with
understand both
children.
sides of an issue, you can't really help resolve it. So I think that's being able to listen to somebody with a different point of view is something I do professionally. But my participation in this group has helped me to be less self-conscious about being more present for that conversation. Not just taking notes and understanding what are their points and how am I going to rebut them, but trying to be fully present in the moment with the person who has something to say, so that they don't just feel heard, but that they actually are heard as a complete experience. And I think that helps me.
That's great. We're into what's called "You've Got to Be Kidding,"
Uh-huh.
and that's where we say something and everybody says, "You've got to be kidding." And Rumni and Laurie, I want you to wind up this with "You've got to be kidding," because there was still one man, I don't know if there was one man or two, correct me, who it didn't matter what you did. What did you think? She's
I know what
sweating
you're talking
in.
about. Yep, yep.
Yeah, so
One
what,
man
what,
who
do
was
you-
always
what
on the
happened
far end
afterwards? Did
extreme.
anything ever happen with him or change his mind? He just said because you probably always got the people that just, you can't do anything. with.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he was present and he heard us, that's important. We weren't there to change anybody's mind, but just give them tools. And I kind of can relate to him because when we first started the conversation, I was kind of like him. I thought that I knew all the answers and what I felt was true. In fact, I don't think, I will confess, Andrew and I was not particularly comfortable with Andrew. Again, because I didn't know him. He had very
You
difficult...
got to be kidding. I horrible.
That's not true. That was because we had very difficult political views. But then getting to know Andrew, I feel like, you know what? Maybe I need to look at myself. Maybe I was the one who was really rigid, and I didn't give him
Isn't that
a
something?
chance
That's
to
huge.
explain. Yeah. So I feel like, I
And that
have a lot
works.
of respect.
And that works both ways. There
Oh.
was, it's very easy to look at somebody's outward, expression, and say, that's not a person I could ever be friends with or get along with.
Well, what was the result with that gentleman? Did he ever, maybe a week later, say, I practiced this, I tried that, or is he still?
Can't say that he ever did. He's always a little bit outside the
You're not
outside
kidding.
edge.
This
But
is-
that's his
I
style.
wanted
That's
to
all
follow
right. I
up with him.
learned a
Yeah.
lot
This is
from
our
him.
new "You've
so-
got to be kidding" bag for the night. We
Uh-oh.
usually have this blue bag and it says "You've got to be kidding," but I was somewhere else. So now this is cheese bag. Anyway, we'll get it back. Isn't it? You go say "You've got to be
Another
kidding."
cheesy TV.
Cheesy TV.
So anyway, this really is interesting. And I think what it does is it wakes up people. I bet you touched, over 100 people that night who said, I
hope so.
know I walked away saying, and I found myself afterwards in my dealings, the same as Ray said, maybe looking at it a little different, maybe having a little more patience instead of saying, you don't know what you're talking about.
Do you have plans to do this again, whether
Yeah.
it's locally or anywhere else?
We've talked about it, yeah. We've had people ask us, at least at the church, to do it again. And
No,
And
other
we're
than the
hoping
church,
to.
how about organizations? Other organizations?
That would be a great idea
Yeah.
to do it for other organizations.
well, we'd
Suggestions?
like to bring in a nice varied group. So
Yeah, well, that's a wrap.
That is.
Didn't I tell you the time would go by fast?
Yes.
It's all, thank you so much.
Oh.
This is really what you do for the community, not just for your church, because the Unitarian is non-denominational. What you do for the community is just fantastic. And that program, you really would have been there. But I think we gave our viewers a little taste of it.
You're probably going to get
Thank you.
people asking now, people who are watching the show. So just be
that's
aware.
good. That's good.
Well, thank you
That was
very
great.
much.
Oh,
This is-
thank you
the
guys.
program
Thank
itself
you.
was wonderful that night, and we're so happy that you shared it with us so that we
Yeah,
could share it with
came
our
here.
viewers.
Great.
And I'm going to address our viewers now, and thank you so much for watching. This is a little bit different format. We have 4 people sitting not at a table, but that's okay, it worked.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you'd like any more information about topics like this, or you want to get in touch with these folks, we'll be happy to do that for you. And of course, as we always say, we want to hear from you about your ideas for other topics or feedback on topics you've heard. Because remember, this is your show. The law, your money, and you.